Welcome to Fika's Focus. Voices leading change.
Kia ora, Rose. How are you?
Hi, yeah, good.
Big topic for Fill the Gap.
Huge.
I think this topic is probably going to be a constant conversation with us. We're talking about pathways to school and school readiness, whatever we want to talk about in that space. But we're going to try to really support the sector in terms of giving a insight into the role of Te Whariki and the early childhood educator and what that looks like moving into that space with children transitioning into school.
Yeah.
So we've got a start point. We'll start with the Te Whariki curriculum and basically what the Pathways to School page discusses in Te Whariki.
So within Te Whariki, we have it's more than a page, it's like a chapter, literally outlining the pathways to school. And they kind of start the chapter off by saying that learning is a journey, a lifelong journey. It starts at birth and it never ends. And so us as early childhood as a sector, we need to be laying the foundations for success ongoing. And it talks about how each part of the education journey, so from early childhood to primary school to secondary school onto tertiary, they are essentially preparing the learners for the next step so that they have success when that transition happens.
So we are just about to send off our first cohort of young children who started with us as babies, so 6 months kind of ish, into that space of school now. So the hope is that we have them prepared for the next stage.
Yeah. So if you look at the overall vision of Te Whariki, it outlines that we aspire for all children to be competent, confident learners and communicators, healthy in mind, body and spirit, secure in their sense of belonging and in the knowledge that they make a valued contribution to society. So within their time with us, that's a huge aspiration, with lots of different levels of work around different aspects of it. So it's it's a big responsibility for us as educators.
In an unmeasurable way.
Yeah.
See, the hard thing I think for us as educators in early childhood space is that we are, and I've discussed this before, we're creating a compounded effect. So we only will see the benefits, ideally, of the work that we've done only when they're much older.
Later in life.
So let's just unpack some of those the wordings there. So we're just talking about healthy in
mind, body and spirit.
Yes, so healthy in mind, body and spirit. So what does that look like in terms of what the sector's doing for young children? What are sort of the actions we take in that space from baby, because you've got Gussie and that, from that baby space into basically at their point of going to school?
Yeah. Well, it's huge. Looking at, so healthy in mind, that to me means children that are connected with the environment and the people in that environment. They feel safe, secure. So those barriers are gone. They are, their sense of belonging is there, right? Mm-hmm. They understand that they are safe, that they have the ability to be able to explore and be curious without any barriers.
And judgment.
Yeah.
I think when taking children into schools, in a school space, a good example of when we see we're achieving that is that they can interact and they can sit at mat time, or they can go and engage in the activity without having to ultimately be right next to the supporting teacher. But also, I think there is a sense of excitement for the next stage too. I think that's an unspoken discussion, which is how excited is the child to go to school?
Yeah.
Or how excited is the child for the next stage?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about healthy mind, body, soul, how is that even immeasurable?
That's a good question.
It's a hard ask.
It is. And I think what a healthy mind, body and spirit means for one child is going to be different to another. You know, like I've got two children who are so different in their personalities. And so I know, well, I'm anticipating, I don't actually know, that their transitions to school are going to be quite different. One is probably a lot more of an observer and slowly takes in the environment before they feel like they can fully explore confidently. And I've got my other boy is the opposite. He is like, on the surface, he comes across as a really confident explorer from the minute he walks in somewhere. So it's like they're both healthy in their mind, body, and spirit, but if you're measuring it from the interactions with a teacher who is essentially a stranger, you know, a new teacher, is that the right way to measure that they are healthy in mind, body, and spirit?
Well, I think the question to ask there is, will primary schools ask that question?
Yeah, exactly.
So, because we're talking about pathway, I'm just thinking about in an ascension situation where we are requiring an early childhood educator to evolve a child's ability to move through the journeys of being a baby, toddler, preschooler, then into a space that we now have no control over. What we see as success and what we're actually guided to as saying this is success, we're now, dare I say, throwing them into a scenario that it's different. It's completely different.
It's different, yeah.
So
I think the curriculums align in their vision. Like there is the New Zealand curriculum in their vision of what they want at the end of a child's education is similar. They want a confident, connected, actively involved, lifelong learner.
Yes.
All that kind of. So it's similar, but I think because the curriculums themselves are so different, you know, the learning areas are different, the learning outcomes are different, the measurables are different from early childhood to primary school. It's like finding what success looks like in each space. Do they align?
Interestingly, in execution, that's the difference here. We're talking about execution because you're right. I agree with you in terms of NZC and the New Zealand curriculum and Te Whariki. I think they're both
similar visions.
Yes,
but are they?
But in practice,
yes. Yeah.
And then so let's just come back a wee bit. So if we're talking back to Te Whariki and what we're trying to achieve for children, I just want us to unpack what does that look like in action through each stage of a child being in an early curriculum space. So going from baby to toddler, so infant to toddler to preschool, how are we adapting as educators
to ensure they're ready for the next step?
To ensure that, because we've got 3 micro stages in our macro.
Yeah. Oh. I think, so how do we see success in those spaces?
Well, how do we lift the probability of success? I mean, there's a whole range of factors, but let's just say we had a child, because we often have many children who spend upwards of 40, 45 hours, if not all 50 hours with us. So how do we ensure or lift the probability of ensuring that within our micro stages, within our macro, the micro stages of infancy, toddler, and they are very different stages, infants to toddlers to preschool. What are we doing as educators in that space that aligns with what Te Whariki is asking us to doing, and that allows us to lift the probability of success to progress to the next stage?
Well, I think if you walk into any ECE provider, kindergarten, you're going to see and feel, that's the goal, right? See and feel Te Whariki alive within those walls. And the interactions of the children together, the children with their kayak or the children with the environment around them, you will see them actively working towards the learning outcomes through their daily interactions, with teachers being intentional around how they are individually supporting children or collectively supporting groups of children to to achieve, no, I don't even like that word, to work towards progress in different areas.
Yeah, we're raising probability
Yeah.
of success. I
Yeah.
think we can't guarantee success, but we can certainly do a lot to raise probability.
Yes. And I think it's just in your daily actions in those
Yes,
spaces.
I was about to talk to that.
Every-
And finding daily opportunities to praise the growth.
Yeah.
So
And to bring it to everyone's awareness too. Like, children are naturally learning with us. If we even take a step back and it's the way that they're programmed. Their brains are growing, changing, learning, absorbing everything around them. So
as adults, actually, we are too.
yeah. But I think it's more rapid in those early years because of the cognitive development in those early years. But so it's bringing that making that learning visible, and being able to actually dive into it with whānau and with the kids too. Like, do you know that this is what you're doing when you're sitting down and you're playing with Play-Doh? Like, you can talk to them. You can be like, your muscles are working really hard to be able to squish and pull and cut. Like, and those muscles are really important. What else can you do with those muscles? And, it's just making them aware that actually they might think that they're just creating a cake out of Play-Doh, but they're doing so much more than that. They're doing so much more than that. They're
With their
developing.
imaging, they're
Probably
anticipating.
it's in a group
shape.
setting. They're
Yep.
talking to
Yep.
There's so much going on. So it's making that learning visible is going to be what. So they know that they're learners, and they know that they are actively involved in that process. They're not passively.
One of the best things what I love about our sector, what ECE, there is not a lot of external pressure. So the external pressure comes from a set upon agreed pieces of outcome that no child has an ability to influence. And I always liken it to going to a restaurant. If you go to a restaurant and you have one bad experience, you don't go back. You can complain, but the likelihood in 2023 is you won't go back.
And you'll probably tell people not to go there either.
And you would tell people.
Yeah.
Children in our either any educational setting until they're 16 or whatever it is, they don't get that choice. And what I love about ECE is there's not a set, agreed upon piece of almost tickable criteria that tells us that we need to get them to by a certain stage. So that's, and the second thing is what we also don't want to see is that we've made a decision for them that they're at above or below. No. Because in that external pressure, it absolutely hones the interaction of what the teacher, the educator will do with that child.
Yeah.
It's
prescribing what action needs to be taken to get...
Correct.
Yeah.
And that model, if we look... And I've got to probably sharpen up a wee bit here, but I was lucky enough to work in a British curriculum, and it completely frustrated me because I was told what I had to teach.
Yeah.
So like week 3, day 2, session 4, you had to teach that the life cycle of a butterfly was at this stage. Like you had to do it.
It's not relevant to their world and their life.
No, and actually they had no sway over what they were learning. And it was actually quite fascinating how global that approach to learning is.
Yeah. And I think that's, like, for me, we need to be able to shift the mindset of people who have come from an education system like that. Like our education system in New Zealand previously too. Like we're not, we in New Zealand have probably, my parents probably had a different education system to what I went through, right? And what I went through might be different to what my children go through. So I think whānau understanding that actually school, hopefully, is quite different to what it was when you were there. So that being open to what, I don't know, the first thing that parents say when I say, what do you want your child to be able to do before they go to school? Write their name, count to 10, but why? That's what they do at school.
Yeah.
Why should they be doing that as a 4-year-old? Some of them naturally do because they're curious about literacy and numeracy and cool, that's that child leading their learning, and that's something that we will follow and foster. But we're not going to sit down and be like, you must write your name 10 times before you go to school. Like, what is the benefit of that?
Well, just closing the loop back on this curriculum piece, how do we, let's ask the question, like, are we, as a sector, as an early childhood provider with future focus, are we setting children up to succeed in their next phase?
I think we're doing a good job to make inroads in that.
Yeah, to lift the probability of it.
Yeah.
Yep. And some of the deliberate actions we've taken are around following the children's interests.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
I have witnessed, and I'll use my own children, Frankie, my youngest, actually had no interest in school whatsoever. Courtney and I put no pressure on her. I don't do homework.
Yeah.
I don't sit her down and write stuff. If she's interested in it, I do it. But I know that she'll catch up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a deep belief in it. Marlo went to a certain school. She was part of an immersion unit. That was an aspiration for us. We heard that they were having an immersion unit, full immersion Māori. I wanted that for her and for Frankie, actually. It just hit some snags, and we made a decision to pull her out and put her into the school that we were zoned for. And so she's come out of an immersion space and is, according to the school, basically where she should be in the English space. Now, here's a child who has started at primary school, coming out of Future Focus, started in primary school in Pākehā speaking settings, English speaking, goes into an immersion class for 6 terms, leaves the immersion class, goes back into Pākehā settings, and now she's just basically caught back up with a bit of hard work and the school supporting her. But actually, I had no concerns that she was going to be miles behind.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm alluding to is, because Frankie is behind, as according to their as according to their measure, their metric.
Yeah.
But actually, none of them are behind.
No, they're just where they're at.
They're just where they're at,
And they're hopefully moving forward.
and that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
I think the goal is to not stop moving forward.
Yeah. And stop comparing children to children. Compare the child to themselves.
Yes. So
Which is what Te Whariki lets us do.
I know.
Yeah.
So that's when I discussed the external pressures.
Yeah.
Or lack of.
Yeah.
A lack of. I mean, we still certainly have to show progression.
Yes.
Like we're required to show progression, and I think that's justified, but interpreted in a way that is measurable against our child. That is it.
Yeah. Not
There's
against a
no
random
benchmark.
child. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Against themselves.
From the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, I think that's a good way of closing the loop on that kind of pathways to school and what the curriculums are discussing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.